You told us something, and I think this is sneaky big news, and it is something to keep in the back of everybody's mind. Not in the front, but in the back. The Celtics went up to Toronto last night. The Celtics played that game very shorthanded. That may not have been a coincidence.
Yeah, so they played on Sunday, and they played a back-to-back on Monday in Toronto. So they left a bunch of guys home, which is not shocking. However, remember, we all talked about how Kyrie could not have played in Toronto under the current rules in a playoff setting because he's not vaccinated. Kyrie is not the only unvaccinated player in the league. So Celtics left 3 guys home, and Robert Williams was injured. Jason Tatum was left home, Al Horford was left home, Jaylen Brown was left home. They were all on the injury report. But again, they played on Sunday. So Tim Bontemps, our reporter who covers the Celtics, asked the Celtics, if this was a playoff series, would all of your players be eligible to play in Toronto? And the Celtics said no comment. Now, Jason Tatum is on the record as saying that he got vaccinated. But this is just something to keep in mind, not just for the Celtics, but for any team that would play Boston. But in this case, Celtics left players home and has left us to wonder, and they won't comment on it, left us to wonder what potentially would happen if they played a series against the Raptors.
It's fascinating. And, RJ, as Wendy was telling us that this morning, I could see the look on your face. It obviously is super interesting and potentially important. And, look, the Raptors, I don't think they're one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the Eastern Conference. But if they wind up having that level of home court advantage for 3 or even 4 games in a playoff series, they're going to be a tough out.
No, they're going to be extremely tough out. And you know, for me, when I look at the Toronto Raptors, we talked about it, you know, on Get Up this morning, is that if they were a little bit better, it could be a severe problem. It would be a severe advantage, because if they were, let's say, the 2 or let's say the 3, and like there was 3 or 4 players or 1 or 2 players left off of every roster that went up there. But look, I think this is something that they still got to make it. They still have, they're not out of the play-in kind of range yet. Cleveland won last night, and so did the Raptors. So it's kind of still at that 1-game spot. But look, I think whatever team goes to Toronto, we're going to see players not be there. Okay,
so now let's get to where I meant to begin, and that's Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. About 20 minutes ago on Get Up, I asked you, Richard, to do the impossible, which is to list the top 5 candidates to win the NBA championship this year. And I say it's impossible because, I mean, I've been covering the sport for 30 years. I've been following the sport for almost 50 years. I cannot remember a more competitive time in the NBA than it is right now. So the 5 teams that you picked, number 5, you picked Memphis, 4, you picked Miami, 3, Boston, 2, Milwaukee, and number 1, Phoenix. The team that you left out of that is the Nets. And we're going to continue to have this fight because I understand the Nets are not perfect, and those other teams may be more complete. But you put Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on the floor together for 7. I'm going to need to see someone beat them 4 out of 7 times to believe it's going to happen.
No, I completely agree. But my issue is this. We talked about the potential of a play-in. So they would have to win a single elimination situation. Now, they could potentially be going to Toronto, so that would be no Kyrie. They could potentially be playing against Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks. And you're like, wait a second. Trae Young can beat anybody. Trae Young can just have one of those Trae Young nights, just like Kevin Durant can. So when I look at having to win a single game, possibly like 2 single-game eliminations, then getting – it could be an array of teams at this point in time, and then having to play that level of basketball, again, without a Ben Simmons. We don't know if Ben Simmons is going to be on the floor. There's not a lot of optimism. He hasn't started on-the-court workouts right now, and we're a couple of weeks from the postseason. So when you look at all of that, they would have the most difficult path in the history of the NBA to go win a championship, and I'm just going to go with the odds versus them.
I don't argue that. That part of it I agree with. Straight Talk Wireless, no contract, no compromise. The road is obviously incredibly difficult for them and made more so by the play-in situation. Wendy, let's talk about Simmons. What should a fan be expecting right now as far as Simmons playing at all the rest of this postseason?
Well, they say he's feeling better. And those epidurals that players get in their back, I mean, Richard, you've played with guys who've gotten them. They do work. They do, you do feel better. It doesn't fix the underlying issue. So it's on the table. He could play. But I just want to point out, he hasn't played in like 320 days.
Right.
And he's never played for the Nets. Steve Nash said last week, we would bring him out there in a playoff game to play his first game in our uniform. So he's left that as a possibility. So I'm not going to sit here and say that he's not going to play. But to expect him to come in and be super effective, that's just a major stretch.
Well, he's got to want to play. Like, because guys can play. Like, you don't have to be 100%. Look, we've been critical of James Harden at times, but James Harden going out there on half a leg last year during the postseason, just trying to give the team something because he believed in them, that says a lot about James Harden and who he is. Like, Ben Simmons has to want to play. Now, back injuries are difficult. You can't really question that, but it's just like you wonder. Another compliment to Kyrie. When Kyrie got the okay, he was 100% ready to go. Kyrie was busting his tail when nobody was watching. And that's why he's been able to play so well from the minute they gave him the okay to put on a jersey. There was no, we need to build him up. He was giving you 40 balls, 35, like he was ready to go. Ben Simmons, you wonder about his conditioning. How much work was he putting in over the time when he was sitting out waiting on that call? Then when you ramp things up and all of a sudden your body's like, I need a moment here. And that's when I think you start to see other things creep in. So it's all about how much Ben Simmons wants to play and what he's willing to deal with to get on the court.
Greeny and RJ and Windy, presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $700 on average. Call or click today. Our next stop is Philadelphia. I had Legs on the TV show yesterday, and he was talking about, and Windy has a stat for it, how James Harden, you watch him play right now, and the thing he does better than not only any player in the NBA today, but maybe as well as practically anyone we've ever seen, is something that right now he's not doing. The question is, will he ever do it again? And that thing is just beating people off the dribble.
First step. I mean, you talk to scouts, you talk to players. Listen, you talk to players on his own roster. They will be like, he's lost a step. Now, has he lost a step forever? Is he lost a step for this year? Is it conditioning? Is it that hamstring injury?
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.